Hi, I'm USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me for One Chapter a Day, The Clean Romance Way. I'm going to be reading Chapter 13 of The Cowboy and the Billionaire's Daughter. Be sure and take a second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Okay, here we go. Chapter 13. The wind ruffled lightly through Brooke's hair as she walked onto the front porch. She stood looking at the never-ending space around her that looked lonely and desolate. After the unsettling conversation with Myrna, she called her mother and ranted and raved about the situation until she finally convinced her to send someone with her car first thing in the morning. At least then she wouldn't be stuck out here day after day twiddling her thumbs with only the crickets to keep her company. Myrna had informed her that the family would be having dinner together at 6 p.m. sharp in the dining room. According to her, family dinners were a nightly ritual that everyone was expected to attend. "It's a great opportunity to show them all what you're made of," Myrna said. "You're an official member of the family and you need to start acting like it." Myrna's open and confident manner had given Brooke the jolt of courage she needed to get through her first full day on the ranch, although she wasn't feeling nearly as confident now as she had a half hour ago. It was just now 11:15. The entire day stretched out before her, and she didn't have a clue how to spend it. Nash was nowhere to be found, so much for spending 4 hours a day together. She thrust out her lower lip in a pout, feeling sorry for herself, and then she heard whooping and yelling. She walked over to the side of the porch and leaned over the railing, craning her neck to see what all the commotion was about. About 2 football field lengths away, a group of men were gathered around a metal fence attached to an outbuilding. From this distance, she couldn't tell what was happening, but her curiosity was piqued. She debated for a few minutes about whether or not she should go back there. Finally, she decided that anything would be better than staying out here alone on the front porch. As Brooke neared the group, she counted 4 men. They turned and openly gawked. Her cheeks went flush with embarrassment as she felt their eyes trailing over her denim shirt that was tucked into a pair of snug-fitting designer jeans and chocolate leather cowboy boots. When she heard the wolf call, her first inclination was to turn and run back to the porch. Thankfully, before she could make a complete fool of herself, a lifetime of training took over, and she gave them her trademark haughty smirk that let them know they were lower than the dirt beneath her boots. She met their gazes full on with an arched eyebrow, knowing instinctively that if she let them intimidate her today, she'd be done for. The air grew tense enough to cut, but she wasn't about to back down. One by one, the men began dropping like flies as they looked away. 2 even started nervously shuffling their feet around in the dirt. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a 40-something-year-old man with black hair and a thick mustache stepped forward and extended his hand. "Howdy, ma'am," he uttered in a deep baritone voice. "The name's Crew." She grasped his hand, making sure to give him a firm handshake while looking him in the eye. "Brooke," she said in a no-nonsense tone. He nodded and let go of her hand and began pointing out the other men. "This is Charlie, Gunner, and Raoul." One guy tipped his cowboy hat and the other 2 nodded. "Hey!" She stepped up to the gate, trying her best to act like she was in control of the situation. "I heard the hollering. What's going on?" Crew's coal black eyes sparked like she'd said something funny. "Your man's about to ride." Her man? She didn't know what in the heck Crew was talking about, but then she looked across the pen to where the outbuilding was located and saw Nash. There was a bull in the chute, and he was climbing atop it. A man was standing on the bottom rung of the metal gate helping him get situated. Her heart jumped into her throat as she caught hold of the metal bars. Myrna's words came rushing back, becoming Brooke's fears as well. The bull looked enormous in comparison to Nash, and his horns were pointy spears that could rip through Nash's skin as easily as a pencil poking through paper. Her muscles grew tight with anxiety as she watched Nash give the man a nod. He swung open the gate, and the bull charged through, bucking and kicking with a vengeance at the bell, which was hanging by the strap attached to the bull's torso. Nash's face was a picture of fierce concentration as he held on with his right hand, his left hand balancing in the air. His body jerked around like a lifeless rag doll tossed in the wind. A whistle blew, and then Nash slobbed off the bull and scurried out of its path. Then he ran to the gate and jumped over. The man began whooping and hollering again. A giddy relief rushed over her as she let out a whoosh and then took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air. She'd not even realized that she'd been holding her breath. Her knees were rubbery like she'd just come off a roller coaster. Then she realized Crew was watching her with hawk eyes. She straightened her shoulders and trailed her fingers through her hair in an attempt to gain composure. "Is that the first time you've seen your boy ride?" She hated how transparent she was, but she wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of answering. So she merely shook her head and turned her attention to Nash. He was talking to the man who'd opened the gate. When he saw her, he gave her a broad wave and smile. She was unprepared for the warmth that flowed over her like a heat wave as she waved back. A few minutes later, he approached. For some reason, butterflies swarmed in her stomach as she watched him talk to the man who gave him handshakes and hearty slaps on the back. Then he turned to her, a lopsided grin on his handsome face as his eyes flicked over her appreciatively. "Hey." It was nice to know that he still found her attractive. Hey, that was something. Amusement tinged his features. In a good or bad way? She tilted her head. "I'm not sure." On the one hand, there was something wildly intoxicating about seeing him riding a bull, but it was also dangerous. He looked disappointed. Without thinking, she touched his arm. "Very impressive," she added, trying to soften the blow. Crinkles appeared around his eyes as he rewarded her with a genuine smile that seemed to catch the light. "Thanks. I see you've met the guys." "Yes, Crew was kind enough to introduce me to everyone." She didn't dare mention that they'd been ogling her earlier like she was a prized hen. "So, do you ride every day?" "Sure do. Several times a day during the season." "Really?" The thought of him going on that monster several times a day was nearly beyond comprehension. "Aren't you afraid of getting hurt?" He chuckled. "I don't think you need to be too worried about old Blue Shoes. He's good enough for training, but is nothing compared to the bulls I ride during the tournaments." Fear clogged her throat as she looked at the monster bull. She didn't want to think about Nash riding something more fearsome than him. Nash laughed lightly, giving her a quizzical look. "Don't tell me that you're worried about my well-being. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were starting to sound like a real wife." Her eyes turned to saucers. I wouldn't go that far." Myrna's words came rushing back. She hadn't even been married to Nash a full 24 hours, and she was starting to care. A lot. And it petrified her. "Well, that's a pity," he drawled, a hint of teasing in his eyes that looked more blue than gray in the sunlight. For a split second, Brooke forgot that there was anyone else there beside them until Crew spoke. "You keep riding like that, and you'll be a shoe-in for a top-seeded slot this year. Blue Shoes even gave you a roll." "A roll?" Brooke asked dubiously. Luckily, the bull hadn't rolled over Nash, or he would have been crushed, every bone in his body. "It's when a bull changes directions mid-air." "Oh." A loud clanging rent the air, sounding like a cross between a cowboy, a cowbell, and rattling chains. "Lunchtime," one of the men announced as they walked swiftly towards the main house, leaving Brooke and Nash alone. Things between them got awkward fast, and Brooke could tell Nash was searching for something to say. "So, are you getting settled in?" "I'm working on it. Cynthia helped me out of my wedding dress and then showed me where my room was." He used his sleeve to wipe the sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, you look so peaceful sleeping on the couch that I hated to wake you." "I met Myrna. She fixed me an omelet." "Myrna's a jewel." "Yeah, I really like her, and she thinks the world of you." The conversation felt stilted and forced. Her heart sank. Was this how it was going to be for the next 18 months? Both of them tiptoeing around the other while drowning in polite conversation? "You hungry?" "No, I just ate a little while ago." He adjusted his cowboy hat. "Oh, yeah, you just said that." "I'll go in with you while you eat. And then maybe you can show me around the ranch." A mischievous glint lit his eyes. "I've got a better idea." "Oh, yeah? What's that?" "I'll show you around the ranch, which will take all of about 15 minutes. And then let's go horseback riding." "Horseback riding?" When they were a couple, Nash kept trying to talk her into going horseback riding at the ranch, but she always came up with excuses as to why she couldn't go. Was this his way of taunting her now that she was stuck here? Her throat turned to sandpaper as she swallowed. "I don't know. I've never really considered myself to be a horse person." He chuckled, and his eyes sparkled with an infectious excitement that caused delicious tingles to circle down her spine. "Come on, live a little." A grin slid over her face. "Okay, you talked me into it." Admittedly, the thoughts of getting on a horse tied her in knots, but having Nash all to herself for several hours was too tempting a proposition to pass up. His phone buzzed, and he reached for it. "Hey, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll get right on that, thanks." He ended the call and placed the phone back into his pocket. "Everything okay?" That was my dad. The fence on the back corner of the property is down, and he wants me to reconnect the barbed wire before the cattle get out." Disappointment stabbed at her. "Oh, okay," she said despondently. She was back to square one, trying to find something to do. "Hey, why don't you ride out there with me? We can still take the horses. I'll just load a few tools on the saddle." She brightened at the thought. "Are you sure?" He smiled. "Absolutely." Okay, what'd you think? Sorry I bumbled a little bit. My mouth is like, woo-woo, trying to get all those words out. But I kind of can't help but admire Brooke's torque. It would be tough to have those ranchers ogling you. I thought Brooke handled the situation well. She's right. Like, she had to be tough. Otherwise, the men would have just bulldozed right over her. It was neat that Brooke got to see a snippet of Nash's everyday life. It would be daunting to know that your husband was riding a bull several times a day. I don't think I would like that at all. How do you think the horseback riding will go? That seems like an interesting venture here. I'm excited. So join me tomorrow and we'll find out as I read the next chapter. Here's to keeping it sweet and swoony. See y'all tomorrow.